Namaskar. A warm welcome to World News and Indian Perspective on All India Radio. This is Nishit Kumar and with me is Vaibhav Jyotsna Srivastav, bringing glimpses of the major developments of the day from across the globe. Over the next half an hour, we shall bring you the latest from the world of politics, economy, sports, entertainment and more. The headlines. Prime Minister Narendra Modi lauds Japan's friendship with India as one of the most trusted in both strategic and economic spheres. External Affairs Minister of India Dr. Jaishankar discusses current situation in and around Afghanistan with Afghan President Ashraf Ghani. German Chancellor Angela Merkel is on an official visit to the United States of America. WHO Chief Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus warns about early stages of COVID-19 third wave in the world. India bats for rights of developing countries on the fisheries subsidy negotiations at the WTO. And at the Tour de France, Tadej Pogačar wins stage 18 to extend overall lead. As the nationwide free COVID-19 vaccination campaign at government facilities for those above 18 years is underway, we advise our young listeners to get vaccinated and also to help others get vaccinated. We also advise our listeners not to lower their guard as COVID-19 remains a threat to our health. Please stay at home unless it is essential to go out and continue to follow these three simple steps. Wear a face mask. Maintain 2 gaz ki doori for social distancing and focus on hand and face hygiene. For any COVID-related information and guidance, contact national helpline numbers 011 2397 8046 and 1075. And now the news in detail. Prime Minister Narendra Modi lauded Japan for being one of the most trusted friends of India today in both the strategic and economic spheres. He added that India's friendship with Japan is considered one of the most natural partnerships in the entire region. Mr. Modi says this at the inauguration event of the International Cooperation and Convention Center Rudraksh in Varanasi. The Rudraksh Convention Center has been constructed with Japanese assistance. Mr. Modi lauded Japan's effort in helping to build the convention center. Mr. Modi said that India and Japan are of the view that our development should be linked with our gaiety and the development should be all-round, should be for all and should be all-encompassing. Mr. Modi said that Rudraksh Convention Center shows the strong connect between India and Japan. Mr. Modi said that Prime Minister of Japan, Mr. Yoshihide Suga, has been personally involved in the project and said that every Indian is grateful to him for his affinity towards India. Prime Minister Modi also remembered former Prime Minister of Japan, Mr. Shinzo Abe, who was closely connected with the establishment of the convention center. The Prime Minister said that building has both the shine and modernity and cultural glow and has the connection of India-Japan relationship as well as scope of future cooperation also. Mr. Modi said that from his visit to Japan, this kind of people-to-people relations were envisaged and projects like Rudraksh and Zen Garden in Ahmedabad symbolize this relationship.
External Affairs Minister of India, Dr. Jaishankar, called on Afghan President Ashraf Ghani on the sidelines at the Tashkent Connectivity Conference in Uzbekistan. They discussed the current situation in and around Afghanistan. Dr. S. Jaishankar reiterated India's support for peace, stability and development of Afghanistan. Dr. Jaishankar also met with Kazakhstan Foreign Minister Mukhtar Telyuberdi and discussed COVID cooperation, SCO and Afghanistan. He also met Deputy NSA of U.S. Elizabeth Sherwood Randall and U.S. Special Representative for Afghanistan Reconciliation Zalmay Khalilzad. They exchanged views on the evolving situation in Afghanistan. He had earlier begun his Tashkent visit by inaugurating the IT room of India-Uzbekistan Entrepreneurship Development Center. The minister called the center a shining example of India and Uzbekistan's development cooperation. He exuded confidence that the center will support talented Uzbek entrepreneurs. In another development, External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar also met with his Bangladesh counterpart, Dr. A.K. Abdul Momen. The two ministers reviewed progress in India-Bangladesh ties, including the aspect of connectivity.
Meanwhile, as part of Operation Allies Refuge, the U.S. is expected to begin relocation flights for eligible Afghan nationals and their families who are currently within the Special Immigrant Visa Program by the end of the month. Pentagon Press Secretary John F. Kirby, briefing the media on Wednesday, said that the Department of Defense is involved in identifying potential relocation options for those Afghan nationals. While Kirby didn't name specific locations, he did say all options are being looked at to include locations overseas and within the U.S. Minister for State at the External Affairs Ministry, Mr. V. Muralidharan, said that the non-aligned movement NAM must be at the vanguard of efforts to strengthen international legal frameworks to coherently combat the disruptive activities of terrorists and their enablers. Making the remarks virtually at the mid-term ministerial meeting of the NAM, he said that terrorism is the most flagrant threat not only to international peace and security, but to the very principle and values the group holds dear. This year marks the 60 years since the first NAM conference held in Belgrade in 1961. Mr. Muralidharan said that the founding principles of our movement have guided us in combating challenges such as colonialism and apartheid. As we contend with new challenges, it is these very principles of mutual respect, solidarity and cooperation that will guide the way. Mr. Muralidharan said that NAM movement took the lead in convening the NAM contact group and task force in response to COVID-19 as early as May 2020, as well as the UNGA special session. The minister said that as Prime Minister Narendra Modi conveyed during the NAM contact group summit, and true to our vision of the world as one family, India has been committed to sharing its expertise and resources with the global community despite its own domestic requirements. The minister expressed pleasure at India's successful digital platform for COVID-19 vaccinations, COVIN, being made open source. The minister also reaffirmed India's unwavering commitment to the resolution of the Palestine issue. We strongly support a negotiated solution resulting in a sovereign, independent and viable state of Palestine living within secure and recognized borders side by side at peace with Israel.
German Chancellor Angela Merkel is on an official visit to the United States of America. The White House, in a statement ahead of the visit, said that Vice President Biden is expected to convey gratitude for her leadership role in Europe and around the world as she prepares to depart the German political stage following their elections this September. The statement added that the two leaders will address the threat of climate change, including the need for progress between the leaders meeting this spring and COP26 in Glasgow this fall. They are also expected to discuss the COVID-19 pandemic and the full range of shared security challenges, including Afghanistan, Libya and the Sahel. Shared ways to respond to regional challenges, including addressing Russian cyber attacks and territorial aggression, countering China's rising influence, are also expected to be discussed, among other issues. This is All India Radio giving you the world news.
The centre is disseminating awareness of national helpline numbers for the benefit of citizens during the COVID-19 pandemic. The helpline number of the Health and Family Welfare Ministry is 1075. The child helpline number is 1098. For senior citizens of Delhi, Karnataka, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, Tamil Nadu, Telangana, Uttar Pradesh and Uttarakhand, the helpline number is 14567. The helpline number of National Institute of Mental Health and Neurosciences, NIMHANS, for psychological support is 08046110007. Ayush COVID-19 counselling helpline number is 14443 and MyGov WhatsApp help desk number is 9013151515.
Welcome back to the World News. In today's Hotspot section, we bring you a discussion on the SCO meeting and its implications with respect to Afghanistan. In conversation are Anil Wadhwa, former diplomat, and Nilovar Roy Chaudhary, journalist.
The US and NATO troops having all withdrawn from Afghanistan, the Taliban forces have escalated their violent campaign to take over that country and even made significant inroads. In fact, India pulled out all of its officials and security personnel from the Indian consulate in Kandahar over the weekend. So to discuss and strategize on the evolving situation in Afghanistan, India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar has joined the other foreign ministers of the 8 SCO countries for an in-person meeting in Dushanbe, the capital of Tajikistan. Ambassador Wadhwa, why are these meetings of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, the foreign ministers' meetings at this point of time, so important?
Well, as you said, it's important that the SCO has met at this point in time. And the main agenda on the meeting of the SCO here was, of course, Afghanistan, because of the drawdown of troops of the United States from Afghanistan, which has left the country in a very uncertain situation. Because as we know that the negotiations with the Taliban had been going on for quite some time now, for a number of months and years, in fact, without any satisfactory solution. But the United States, under the Biden administration, has kept to its election promise and withdrawn its troops from Afghanistan. Now, the Afghan government is in a situation where they face an uncertain future of support from other quarters, and at the same time a resurgent Taliban, which is being aided and abetted, in violence by Pakistan, which wants to control the narrative in Afghanistan. So that's the crux of the issue. And as far as the SCO is concerned, for all these countries, it's very important being virtual neighbors without being a physical boundary in some cases, but they are all affected by what happens in Afghanistan, what kind of regime is in governance in Afghanistan, and what spillover it has on their own countries. As far as India is concerned, as you rightly said, we've had to withdraw some personnel from Kandahar, mainly because of the violence in Afghanistan and because the situation has got out of control. A majority of the territory in Afghanistan today is controlled by the Taliban without any focus whatsoever on how the governance is going to shape up in the future. So the legitimately elected government of Afghanistan in Kabul controls very little territory as of now and is losing territory as we speak. And major areas of the border of Afghanistan are under the control of Taliban. There is no meeting ground on how the power will be shared between the central government, elected government, and Taliban, or that there would be a formula which would be evolved, or that there would be future elections in keeping with the democratic traditions which have existed so far in Afghanistan. So in this situation, the SCO meeting assumed special significance because obviously besides Afghanistan, you also have a question of issue of public health and economic recovery, which was on the agenda for some time now for SCO, but also on combating terrorism and extremism. And for India, it became very important that the linkage of combating terrorism and extremism with what is happening in the violence of Afghanistan is clearly spelled out. This is what exactly Foreign Minister Jaishankar sought to do there.
In fact, Dr. Jaishankar has actually asked the SCO to act against terrorism and terror financing and so on at one of these several meetings. There's also been this meeting of the contact group on Afghanistan at which the Afghan Foreign Minister Hanif Atmar was also present. Now, given all of these circumstances, this is the 20th anniversary meeting of the SCO. All of them are pretty much neighboring countries, and Tajikistan is a direct neighbor of Afghanistan. But realistically, what can the SCO really do in a scenario like this, where the Taliban is not really willing to listen to anybody by the looks of things?
You're absolutely right in terms of forcing the Taliban to actually behave in a manner which they're supposed to do. And what are they supposed to do? Essentially three things. One is that they have to preserve the traditions of governance in Afghanistan. Secondly, to ensure that, the existing government in Afghanistan is not overthrown and that there's some amount of legitimacy which remains as far as the new political and power structure in Afghanistan is concerned. And most importantly, not to threaten the neighborhood due to terrorism and extremism, which, as our External Affairs Minister Jaishankar pointed out, the future of Afghanistan cannot be its past, because if you recall, in 1996, the Taliban had taken over the country. And then after that, there was a backlash which was led by the Northern Alliance, which was supported at that point by India, Russia, and Iran. Now, all the Central Asian countries since then have been watching the developments very carefully. There is, of course, a moral force which is important as far as the SCO pronouncements are concerned. And that is what the contact group was supposed to do, in which they issued a joint statement decrying this violence and at the same time making sure that they issued a call that they were against seizure of power by violence and by force, and that illegitimate actions should not be recognized. How far that translates into practice is anybody's guess. Becoming a free-for-all in Afghanistan in the absence of any military opposition to an offensive of Taliban. So in future, if the Taliban plunges Afghanistan into an uncertain future, then of course there will have to be a backlash, as it happened last time around, in which case the population of Afghanistan will suffer. Right now we are facing a very grim situation, if I may say that, because there is not much of political convergence that can see emerging, and at the same time Pakistan has not given up its agenda of controlling the narrative in Afghanistan through the Taliban. So that is one other issue which India in particular has to be very careful about.
You're talking about the role of Pakistan particularly. I mean, Pakistan is also a member of the SCO. The thing is that apparently the Taliban have today sought some kind of a 3-month ceasefire, and I mean soon after taking over Kandahar apparently, to which Pakistan has had to close off its borders with Afghanistan. So this entire situation is really, as you say, very, very murky, and nobody is quite clear about what the outcomes might be. But I think everyone is agreed that other than some kind of a political solution, nobody is willing to accept a violent takeover of Afghanistan. Would that be a correct assessment?
As far as all the countries in the region are concerned, and I would say that includes Pakistan as well, because as far as Pakistan is concerned, they should be able to control the narrative in order to turn the Taliban against India, which seems to be the aim from the very beginning. But at the moment, one can sense a little bit of unease in the Pakistani establishment as well. And in fact, in the meeting which the Pakistani Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi had with Mr. Atmar, and Mr. Atmar actually described the presence of foreign fighters and regional and international terrorist networks alongside the Taliban as being a major threat to the region. And in that meeting, there was obviously an emphasis on practical cooperation between the regional countries, particularly Pakistan, because it controls the narrative as far as Taliban is concerned, in closing the shelters and seizing the funding sources of the Taliban. So that makes the group resume meaningful talks and find a political solution. But how far Pakistan will proceed on that path, it depends a lot on what is happening within Pakistan, and at the same time the control that Pakistan has on the Taliban. So the situation is very fluid, and I think one can hope for the fact that Pakistan will be mindful if this violence escalates, that Pakistan itself will not be spared from that kind of situation which can come back to bite Pakistan itself. And I think SCO member states have also noted this, that the Taliban have not cut ties with Al-Qaeda, despite pledging to do so in their deal with the United States, which has not been implemented on the ground. Also, relations between Taliban, especially the Haqqani network, and Al-Qaeda remain very close, which is based on friendship, a history of shared struggle, ideological sympathy, intermarriage, so many factors. In fact, the Taliban regularly consulted with Al-Qaeda during negotiations with the United States and offered guarantees that it would honor their historical ties. Also, the Taliban have ties with Central Asian and Chinese terrorists and extremist groups that are involved and stationed in Afghanistan. And of course, this is a factor that the other SCO states are taking into account. And it's not as if the Chinese are untouched, because the region of Xinjiang is restive. And if there is a rise of extremism and separatism in Xinjiang, then of course it will create problems for the Chinese presence in Afghanistan as well. In fact, at the moment, unless there is stability in Afghanistan, it will be very difficult for external countries to work and operate in Afghanistan. You will find that slowly, all the investments will dry up, the foreigners will start leaving, and the elite in Afghanistan will also look for safer pastures. So that will not be a good situation as far as Afghanistan is concerned. Unfortunately, within Afghanistan, there are a number of factions within the Taliban. So the factions which are negotiating outside in Istanbul, in Moscow, in Tehran, or in Qatar, they are quite removed from what is happening on the ground. And because of the factionalism which pervades the Taliban at the moment, we don't have a clear line of following instructions. This is what is the current situation.
Is it possible for for example, just hypothetically, that the SCO gets together some kind of a force that could perhaps help the legitimate Afghan government, would something along those lines be workable, do you think?
Yes, it is certainly workable, but I think the two main drivers of such a force will have to be Russia and China. And because as you know, that India has always taken the view that it does not want to get involved militarily in Afghanistan. Yeah. In that context, there's been a very important statement that has been made by the Afghan ambassador yesterday in New Delhi, where he said that to hold on to the situation, the government in Kabul will look for friends to supply it with armaments as well and military aid, in which he also included India. Now, how far that translates on the ground still remains to be seen. I feel that getting a force from the SCO together on this question will, however, be a tall order, because there will be too many views and there are too many conflicting interests amongst the SCO member states.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Wadhwa.
Thank you so much.
China has asked Pakistan to ensure the safety of Chinese projects and its citizens in the country after Wednesday's deadly shuttle bus blast in North Pakistan's Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province, which killed 9 Chinese people. Chinese Foreign Ministry expressed shock at the incident and announced on Thursday that it is sending a special team to Pakistan to investigate and follow up work into the blast that killed at least 13 people. The joint investigation was announced after Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi condemned the blast and urged the Pakistani authorities to get to the bottom of the incident. A further 28 Chinese nationals were among the 36 people injured in the worst incident so far to befall the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor CPEC project. India's COVID vaccination coverage has surpassed 39 crore 49 lakh on Thursday. The Union Health Ministry said more than 35 lakh 15,000 vaccine doses have been administered on Thursday. The ministry said more than 16 lakh 59,000 vaccine doses were administered as the first dose, and over 1 lakh 61,000 vaccine doses were given as the second dose in the age group of 18 to 44 years.
Now let us take a look at the coronavirus updates from around the world. World Health Organization WHO Chief Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus has warned the world about the early stages of COVID-19 third wave amid the Delta variant surge. On Wednesday, the head of WHO said that the world is now in the early stages of the third wave. He said that the Delta variant spread along with increased social mobility and the inconsistent use of proven public health measures is driving an increase in both case numbers and deaths. Meanwhile, the UN warned of a perfect storm on Thursday as the pandemic continues to severely disrupt access to basic vaccines for millions of children. The UNICEF tweeted that up to 17 million children likely did not receive a single vaccine during the year, exposing major inequities in access and representing an alarming rise. In France, almost 20,000 people reportedly took to streets to vent their anger over the decision to require vaccinations for health workers. India's Minister of Commerce and Industry, Mr. Piyush Goyal, on Thursday spoke strongly for the rights of developing countries at the ministerial meeting of the WTO on the crucial fisheries subsidy negotiations. Delivering a strong statement on behalf of India, Mr. Goyal stated that India is very keen to finalize the agreement because irrational subsidies and overfishing by many countries is hurting Indian fishermen and their livelihood. He expressed his disappointment that the membership is still short of finding the right balance and fairness in the agreement. The minister also emphasized Prime Minister Modi's thrust to promote the fishing sector and promote small fishermen. In a statement, the government informed that the meeting was attended by ministers and ambassadors from other WTO members and the Director General of WTO, Dr. Ngozi. Mr. Goyal cautioned against a repeat of the mistakes made during the Uruguay round 3 decades ago, which he said allowed unequal and trade-distorting entitlements for select developed country members, particularly in agriculture. He pointed out that it is essential that big subsidizers take greater responsibility to reduce their subsidies and fishing capacities in accordance with the principles of polluter pays and common but differentiated responsibilities. Putting forth India's demands, he said that the per capita fisheries subsidy given by most developing countries is minuscule compared to advanced fishing nations. Mr. Goyal clearly demanded that countries like India, who are yet to develop fishing capacities, cannot sacrifice their future ambitions. Allowing advanced nations to continue grant of subsidies is unequal, unfair, and unjust. Responding to a specific question posed by the DG, Dr. Ngozi Iweala, to the ministers, he said that limiting special and differential treatment S&DT to poor and artisanal fishermen only is neither appropriate nor affordable and is not acceptable.
Now moving on to sports, in the Tour de France, Tadej Pogacar extended his overall lead and won stage 18 of the Tour de France on Thursday. Pogacar had earlier won the 17th stage after an epic struggle with his two closest pursuers, Jonas Vingegaard and Richard Carapaz. It was an iconic career moment for Pogacar, winning a tough stage. Pogacar already has the overall leader's yellow jersey on his back. With only a few days remaining for the start of the Tokyo Olympics, All India Radio brings a special series on India's medal prospects at the sporting extravaganza. Today we focus on boxer Manish Kaushik.
मैं मनीष कौशिक, इंडियन बॉक्सर। मैं 63 किलो में भारत को रिप्रेजेंट कर रहा हूँ ओलंपिक्स में।
Started in 2008, Manish Kaushik's boxing career has been prosperous.
पहले नेशनल में 2009 में खेला था, फिर मैंने मेडल जीता और फिर 2018 में कॉमनवेल्थ खेला, उसमें मुझे सिल्वर मेडल आया और इससे मेरा आर्मी में प्रमोशन हुआ और मैं आर्मी में सूबेदार के पद पे हूँ।
Year after year, Manish's performance is getting better and better. He won a silver medal at the 2019 South Asian Games in Nepal and a bronze medal in the World Boxing in the same year. He was awarded with the Arjuna Award for his outstanding sporting achievements in 2020. Manish won the gold medal at the Buxom International held in Spain this year. Diksha Saxena, Sports Desk.
Jomol Jose from Idukki, Kerala, won Wednesday's edition of Olympic Quiz with AIR. Congratulations to Jomol from the entire team of AIR News. Conversing with AIR News, Jomol described the occasion as very special and also congratulated the Indian contingent participating in the Olympics.
I'm very happy to be a winner of Olympics quiz. I am an active listener of AR Sports Scan program. Through this program and Olympics quiz, people get more information about Indian athletes and our prestigious sports history. There are only few days left to Tokyo Olympics. I believe our team will perform very well. Let me convey my wishes in my mother tongue, Malayalam. Indian teamine 1000 ആശംസകൾ. Cheer for India.
Now, let us take a look at the major developments around the world as reported in the foreign press. Washington Post quotes the Pentagon and writes that U.S. military once trained Colombians implicated in Haiti assassination plot. Sputnik News writes that Dutch crime journalist Peter R. de Vries dies after being shot in the head in Amsterdam. Financial Times writes that China warns of economic uncertainty despite moderate recovery in the second quarter. Financial Times writes that EU's top court rules that Poland's regime for disciplining judges breaches law. Globe and the Mail writes that South Africa expands its military deployment to fight a domestic crisis years in the making. The Guardian reports at least 38 dead in catastrophic flooding in western Germany, and Gulf Times writes that Biden works the circuit to get historic infrastructure spending. And before we end, a quick look at the headlines once again. Prime Minister Narendra Modi lauds Japan's friendship with India as one of the most trusted in both the strategic and economic spheres. External Affairs Minister of India, Dr. Jaishankar, discusses current situation in and around Afghanistan with Afghan President Ashraf Ghani. German Chancellor Angela Merkel is on an official visit to the United States of America. WHO Chief Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus warns about the early stages of COVID-19 third wave in the world. India bats for the rights of developing countries on the fisheries subsidy negotiations at the WTO. At the Tour de France, Tadej Pogacar wins stage 18 to extend overall lead. India is celebrating the 151st birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi. Before we end, let us listen to his favorite bhajan, Vaishnava Jan, by artists from Costa Rica.
भजन गो तेने कहीं वेद पराए जाने रे.
And with that, we end this bulletin. We'll be back at the same time tomorrow with the next edition of World News.